Hi, CSI fans and followers. Scott asked me if I would send a couple minute video of, I guess, what's been happening here. I hope everyone's well. And when he said that, I began to think and pray, what should I send? And so what came to my mind was just like, I guess, what God has been teaching me through this period of time. So the word that came to my mind the last few days was the word practice. I think it's interesting if you take a person that goes to college 4 years, and then they go 4 years of medical school, and then they might specialize in something for 3 more years, and so they've had all this education, and then when they go to work, what do they call it? Practice. As I was just thinking, isn't it interesting that doctors practice after all that education? And I was thinking about players, athletes do the same thing. They constantly practice. And what came to my mind was Scott was one day we were walking off the football field. We were actually leaving to play Kansas City, and the Pirates were out on the practice field, and Willie Stargell was stepping into the batting cage to take batting practice. And I stood there with my son Caleb, and we watched him take 7 pitches. He bats left-handed. Through of the 7 pitches, 6 of them he parked up in the right upper deck. 6 home runs in a row. Amazing. Taking batting practice. And so I was thinking, Scott, over the last few days that we're not really out around among people. And what do we normally do as athletes? Well, we practice when we can't be preparing for a game. And so for me, practice, I kind of came up with this sequence of things that I wanted to share. That this is me. This is what I've been working on for me. So I'm not speaking specifically to somebody else, but the first thing. The first word that came to my mind in terms of this practice is believe. John 3:16 says, "For whoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life." And some of us believe, but we just kind of stop there. James 3:19 and 20 says, "If you believe, you do well, but even the demons believe." And so I begin to think about that. And so many times we as Christians, we believe, but then we tend to stop there. We don't continue the practice. And as I thought about this the last few days, the next thing that came to my mind is Paul writes in his letter to the Philippians, in Philippians 3:10, he says, "That I might know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering." So God is asking me, I felt in the last few days, John, how much farther did you move from believe to knowing him? And I think the next thing, as I thought about that, is I wrote down the word love. And if you look in John 21, Peter and Jesus are having a conversation by the Sea of Galilee. And I got to visit that particular spot when I was in Jerusalem. I'll never forget it. And that's the spot where Jesus said to Peter 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" He didn't say, "Do you believe me?" But he said, "Peter, do you love me?" And so that's something that he's using the word agape love, not phileo love, "Are you my friend?" And so I start with, in my mind, I'm starting with believe. I'm going, do I know him? If I know him, I can't really know him unless I love him. And then if we look in several passages, Hebrews 11:1, but Jesus speaks of the word faith. And he says, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And we have a mountain in front of us as a country, and many of us have mountains in front of us as individuals. And so we need faith. This is a time we need faith more than maybe any other time in our country and individually. We need faith. But if we don't have faith, we can just believe. But I don't believe we're going to really have that powerful faith unless we know him and then we love him. And then faith has to be put into action. And Jesus said in Luke 14:26-35, he talks about being his disciple. You know, you can have faith, but being his disciple costs. And there he talks about the cost of that discipleship. And he said that you have to, that to be his disciple, you have to love him more than family. He has said you have to love him more than possessions. He said you have to love him more than even life itself to be his disciple. So as this is what God's been teaching me, I feel like in these last few days, is taking each one of those processes and checking it out. And finally, the last thing, and this is where I'm at right now, it's God, if you ask me to do this tomorrow or the next day, maybe there's something else that God is going to be presenting to me. But finally, where I'm at today, or was at yesterday and today, was the word follow. And if I go back to the Sea of Galilee situation, where they just finished eating the fish after Jesus had come back to life, and he asked Jesus asked him three times, asked him, Peter, three times, Peter, do you love me? And Peter said, yes, I'm your friend, three times. But then after that, after the third time, Jesus said this. He said, if you love me, follow me. And I love the word follow there, because follow to me is dynamic. It's not static. You can't follow Jesus statically. You can't follow Jesus standing put. Following Jesus means we get up and we move. And I believe that move is particularly important for us in this period that we find ourselves in. God bless, and let's keep Acts 2:42. And the apostles were studying God's teaching. There, they were in fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. God bless.